Hi, and welcome to the tnkgrl Mobile Podcast. It is June 20th, 2014. I'm your host, Miriam Jouar, and I'm joined today by one of the most awesome women in tech, Nicole Scott, all the way from Taiwan, from Taipei. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's been a while since I've seen you.
No problem. I'm really glad you could join us. It's really a pleasure to have you on. You're like the first guest I've had that's like not in some way connected to my podcast historically. Like I've had a bunch of guests so far. This is like my fifth of the new series on my podcast, and I've had a few guests so far that have done podcasts with me before, in the sense of somehow within Gadget or whatever. And so I was like, I want to pick somebody really awesome to kick off the series of people who are not in some way or another affiliated to my previous podcasts. And so I'm super hyped to have you on. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. So what are the things that we're going to talk about today?
Well, there's a bunch of stuff. I was, as you know, the kind of the general gist of the podcast is one topic which we break every time because it's more fun to say that we're going to have one topic and then completely go crazy. 1 hour, more or less, one guest is typically what I've done. I'm sure I'll break the rules more regularly than not. But I was thinking, look, you played with the LG G3 for a while. And I have one, and it's not out in the US yet. So I know that a lot of my listeners and readers are interested about it, and I'm sure yours are too.
Yeah.
That's one topic. And then, obviously, the elephant in the room, right? The Amazon event yesterday.
Absolutely.
The Fire Phone, and then there is, we can talk about other stuff there. You want to talk about Computex, I know. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, we just finished that up like a week and a half ago, so it's just
it's still pretty fresh.
It's always some trends, so it's a lot did happen, even though there wasn't as much news as other years.
Totally. And then there's some T-Mobile stuff I wouldn't mind talking about just briefly because I was there, and it's kind of interesting what they're doing. They're kind of really pushing the envelope in a really fascinating way. So the LG G3, what's your take?
It seems more durable than the G2. I mean, my one issue with the G2, I absolutely loved it, but I cracked the display. I mean, the bezels were just too thin.
Oh, right? Really? You cracked the display?
Yeah, I cracked the display.
Such a bad streak with displays, don't you?
I'm always cracking displays, but the G3 just seems so much more solid. Like, it has a thin bezel, but it feels like they put like just a lot more, like a more durable chassis on the edges, so I feel more confident.
You still managed to crack it, though.
On the G2.
The G2. Okay, I thought you already cracked the display on your G3.
No,
I was like, wow.
No. No, so I don't think that I'm going to crack the display on the G3. Like, it feels just a little more sturdy. It looks a lot more solid, and so it just doesn't feel like that I'm going to have a $200 bill on it for owning it.
Yeah, I hear you. So you played with it. Like, what do you think? You've had the G2. You've played with the Nexus 5, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So G3, thoughts?
The display is stunning. It's just the display is stunning.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, who cares about 2K? But once you have it, like.
Yeah, it's like the first time you had Retina, right? You were like, this is it. I'm never going back.
I'm never going back. And then LG has that video on it, like scenes of nature, and you show it to people, and they're like, oh my God, my eyes! You're like, it's so beautiful.
It's very true.
Yeah. So yeah, it's true. I don't know if I can go back after having it. I'm supposed to be getting a final production version next week. So cool. That's what I'm going to get, kind of a really deep dive. I got to spend 4 days with it because our German team had one, and they were over for Computex, so I basically got to play with it then. It's fast, like the display is stunning, and I don't feel like I'm going to break it. So overall, it's definitely, I think, going to be one of the top phones of the year.
Totally. What do you think of the battery life and the camera?
The battery life, I mean, it seemed like it was all day. I mean, I didn't actually get to have it as my personal handset for the whole day, right. But Roland, who was using it, who let me use it off and on throughout the show, I rarely had to lend him a battery pack. I was on the LG G2 Pro,
Uh-huh.
which has like pretty decent battery life, and we seem to be going kind of like we start off with the same the same like number like percentage of battery. Then throughout the day, like as we went sightseeing and all this kinds of stuff, he was kind of like, give me the battery pack. I'm like, no, I'm using it. So it seemed like it was about the same.
That's awesome. You know, it's interesting you mentioned that because I could not get a G. It's a G Pro 2, right, or G2 Pro?
Yeah.
G Pro 2. I tried to get one. I mean, I have a really good friend in LGPR who always hooks me up, and he couldn't get me one because apparently, I don't know, it's not really that. It's not a Korean market device. It's sold in other parts of the world for some reason, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he got me. He didn't get me one. He couldn't get me one, and so Brad, he got one, and he lent it to me, and so I'm actually playing right now with it alongside the G3. So I've got both the G Pro 2 and the G3. In fact, I should just pull them out. I know my readers, listeners love it when I do this. So, you know, ta-da, right? On the right is look at that, is the G Pro 2, and this to the left here is the G3. And as you can see, they're both Korean units.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure this one is, but it does have that antenna for Korean TV, so I think it is a Korean model. But anyway, my take is I agree with you. The display is really like one of those, once you've seen it, you can't go back things. I really didn't think this level of DPI would matter. You know, we've been told 400 is all you need. And this is 528, something like that. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Like the pictures in particular and the font rendering on small fonts is really, really amazing. But you know, so there's a few kind of people out there that are in the media and the tech that are saying, you know, we don't like this screen. It's not good enough in terms of color rendition and brightness and contrast. And you know, honestly, I don't see. I mean, I have to say, next to the M8, I see it. Like the M8 has a better display overall for color and contrast and brightness. But I would say that it doesn't matter because of that resolution. It's tough.
You know, I would agree with you. I've been reading a few of those articles that are like, oh, according to the scientific test, there's too much blue on the LG G3 display, and I'm like, really? Like it seems like if you have it on its own, like you know, like in like it immediately erases the history of seeing any other display on any other phone that it ever could have looked good. But it's true. Once you put it beside. So I was doing it beside the Z2, which is my top Android phone right now. It's my absolute favorite. I like it way more than the M8. Side by side with that, I think that the G3 display blows that out of the water, and I think that that's one of the best displays on the market for me.
No, I agree. I agree. I think it's hard to beat. I just think that you know, obviously. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I would challenge anyone out there that sees a G3 and doesn't think this is one of the best displays and isn't amazed by the resolution, despite the fact that we've been told that we don't really need more resolution. Right?
Yeah, I agree. And LG was just so smart. I don't know. Does the version that you have that nature video with like the like the stars? Yeah. Oh, they were so smart to include that, because every time I show off the phone, I was like, look at this, and everyone's like, my eyes. It's just it's like so smart to include that.
Totally. Battery life has been really quite superb for me, and it's amazing to me because this display has got to draw more juice because more pixels to drive, you know, and it's easily 2 days for me right now of moderate use. I mean, you know, I can go hardcore and kill it in a day, of course. With what we do for work, it's easy to do that. But I think I'm actually really impressed. It's probably not quite as good as the M8, but it's pretty damn good battery life despite the display. So.
No, I agree. If it went kind of toe to toe with the LG G Pro 2. Which, you know, has like the bigger display, but it's like not as dense, and to be honest, not as good, like just overall not as good quality as what we have on the G3. the average person, like I think my dad could probably get 3 days out of that phone.
Yeah, for sure. So the G Pro 2 for me is a bit less in battery life than the G3 and pretty much equal use. So it's interesting that it's a, you'd think, that it would balance out, right? The G3 has a bigger higher res display, but it's smaller, so not as much backlight. And then the G Pro 2 is less res, but you get more backlight. So, but and the same processor basically, right? So it's interesting.
So what's your overall impression of the LG, the G2 Pro? Because I'm actually just finishing up my after 1 month of use review, and to be honest, it's a great phone, but I'm kind of like, God, when's Nokia gonna send me the 930? I can't wait to move off of it.
Yeah. Well, I certainly can't wait to get my 930. I have the closest thing you can get to a 930. I have an Icon with 8.1 on it, which is the Verizon specific phone that obviously has almost the same specs. So, but it's not as pretty like that. I want one of those orange ones, orange back. Yeah. You know what? The G Pro 2, honestly, if I had to pick between that and the Note 3, I'd pick the G Pro 2. That's my takeaway. So, because I appreciate that Samsung's actually making an effort to make this form factor more useful by adding the stylus and stuff, but it's still a Samsung phone, which means touch width and the materials and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, the camera on the G Pro 2 is better, in my opinion, than the camera on the Note 3, simply because of the optical image stabilization.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Sasha's a Note 3 user, and he's had it since day one, and he has to get a new battery for it, like a new removable battery for it. He's already kind of, I don't know what's wrong with it, but he can only, he maybe gets 2 hours sometimes, or he gets 8. I don't know how he hasn't moved on to the Xiaomi. It's like horrifying.
So the other thing I want to talk to you about, and because I got lots of opinions about this traditionally, but I kind of want your take, because you use the camera and probably in a different way than I do. What is your take on the G3 camera, if you've had a chance to play with it enough to form an opinion? Any thoughts on that?
It's really good in nighttime shots. Actually, we took it to a night market and took a whole series of photos at night in the night market, and the blacks were surprisingly black.
Yeah,
I was pretty impressed with that.
I have to say it's very much an evolution of the G2 and G Pro 2 cameras, and they were pretty damn good. So this is pretty damn good too. I'm really blown away by the autofocus. The laser autofocus is not a gimmick. It really works, and at night, it really, really works. So was that your experience as well?
Yeah, exactly. Like when you're taking the night market shots, and like the thing is with the optical image stabilizer, often, especially on the G Pro 2, you notice that you can't get, like, if I want to take a dog photo, or I see like this lady in a crazy outfit walking past me, like, oh shit, I need to take a picture of that, and it's often blurry, right? So you just don't get, and like phones with a really good optical image stabilizer often just don't get the kind of sharp photos that you want, and the G3 just seemed to, that wasn't an issue, and that was actually really cool.
I agree. Yeah, I'm very impressed. I mean, so there's one thing I'm not as impressed about the camera, comparing the G3 with its predecessors, both the G Pro 2 and the G2, and that's the camera interface. They've simplified it, and in the process they've removed. There's no way to set things like ISO or exposure or white balance, and in the great scheme of things, it's not a huge deal, because for example, you can use for exposure, you can use the Google camera, which is half decent. You can use I'm trying to think. There's another camera app that I use. Let me see if I've got it installed on here. I can never remember what it's called, but I do use it because it's got all the settings. Let me just have a quick look on my G3 here.
Well, it's really I ran into a guy with a G2, and he actually ported the LG G2 Pro.
Oh, is there an APK of that somewhere?
Yeah, so he actually ported that onto his G2, and when we were in Beijing, we were taking photos together, and he's just like, no, the G2 camera is the best with the APK of the G Pro 2. I was impressed.
I agree. I think that if I had to choose right now, I would be very hard pressed to decide which of the two phones to use, primarily because of the camera interface. Sure, the laser autofocus is an absolutely awesome thing, but I would rather have the UI from the G Pro 2.
Yeah.
Let me find this app. Sorry, I'm getting
Yeah.
distracted. La, 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 where are you? Camera, 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 something. It's like, I wish things had like clear icons. Ah, there you go. Pro Capture.
Pro Capture.
So Pro Capture is a paid camera app on Android, but it's really, really good and really nice. And that solves the, if I want to tweak those settings, I can. But then you have the problem that it's not as fast as the native camera, right? And obviously the whole point of the laser autofocus is the speed. So I'm gonna look for an APK out there to see if I can put the G Pro 2 camera app on my G3, because I think that's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually did, when I had the G3, we took it down south to Taidong, and we did I did a test, an optical image stabilizer test between the S5, the Z2, and the G3, and I was really surprised. I thought the G3 would take it, but it still seems that the Z2 just had slight, well, I was having a hard time telling the difference if it was going to be the Z2 or the G3, but the comments on the video just seemed to be like Z2 for the win, and the color saturation is just a little more accurate.
This is for video you're talking?
In video, yeah, video.
I think it's
downstairs.
I think the G3. I mean, I have to agree that the G3 video is not the best, and it's not bad. Right, it's not as good as the stills, and I'm more interested in the stills, so I can live with what the G3 offers. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think we should give a disclaimer that we're nitpicking here, right? I mean, these are all really good phones. Yeah. Don't like shatter your G3 dreams right now because we're telling you the video is not as good as it could be, right? Right?
It's pretty damn good for a smartphone.
Yeah.
Like really good.
What about 4K? I mean, it's a gimmick to me right now, but I notice it's not really worth it.
For me, actually, it's not a gimmick. 4K is now something that I need on my smartphones because, like, I do a lot of video work, and I'm trying to figure out if I can pare down. And so just having the 4K resolution, and I pare it down to 1080p. Right, so like when I shrink it, it just has a little more detail. I have more data to work with if I want to apply filters and clean stuff up. So
I never thought of that.
It's a very specialized use case, right? Very specialized, but at the same time,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's why I've been using it. And so the Z2 has that problem where it overheats and shuts down the camera app, even if you do move it over onto the SD card. It's just even like a super fast one. But it's like 4 minutes of 4K video. That should be long enough for anything.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'm not saying like I'm not saying that I don't see the difference. I do. It's just I've noticed that it's not as, like, at least on the phones. I don't have a Z2 sadly, so at least on the phones that I've tried it on, it hasn't been mind-bogglingly hugely better. Like, it's just I find that it's obviously pushing this processor so hard that battery suffers and heats up, and so I'm kind of wondering, but I never thought of your use case, which is really awesome, which is like if you can get that raw video, then you can now, you can zoom in on it or scale it down back to 1080p and get basically a finer image, which is awesome.
Yeah, so that's what I've kind of been playing around with to see if I can't ditch my DSLR or my camcorder, just move on to phones completely. We're getting close.
To be honest with you, for me, the only phone that I've felt I can kind of use as a hands-on video device, like to replace my NEX or whatever, my real camera, so far has been the 1520 Lumia 1520 and the Icon, which is the 930, because they're kind of, and of course the 1020, but the 1020 is a little, too slow to use as a normal phone. So to me, it's like the 20 megapixel camera that Nokia has made is kind of like the best compromise of everything they've ever done. It has you know, pretty good resolution, the ability to zoom in without losing anything, really great video performance. The quad mics on these two phones are amazing for audio. And then on top of that, you get the final straw, which is optical image stabilization that actually works superbly for video. So that's my take.
No, I agree. So actually, Nokia screwed up the 1020 when they did the last camera app update. They totally screwed. I'm like, everyone was talking about how great it was, and now I'm like, no, not anymore, not anymore. I mean, it's so yellow. The image stabilizer doesn't work as well as it used to. I have no idea what they did, but they completely ruined that phone. Yeah. It's just, and so I have the 1520, and the 1520 takes way better pictures. I agree than the 1020, but I only have an EU contact for Nokia, so they don't have the icon in Europe.
Yeah, I know. So I hear you.
I'm stuck waiting for the 930, which
you know what? I tell you what, it'll be worth the wait by a long shot. It is everything you love about the 1520 in a totally more manageable form factor, basically. You will miss the no micro SD. That's the one thing that sucks. So get the biggest capacity one you can afford.
Okay. Now, how are you on Windows Phone? Like, are you can you be a Windows Phone user? Can you walk away?
It's getting better with 8.1, but it's still not quite there yet. I mean, yeah, 8.1 is really gotten me much more excited about Windows Phone again. And of course, how can I not be excited with what Nokia is giving us, right? Like, I mean, that hardware that they give us is just top notch. It's just phenomenal. And yeah, it's hard because when I go back to Android, then I miss there's really no camera that compares yet on Android. Even the Z2, I haven't used the Z2 much, but a little bit I did, and the Z1, 20 megapixel, but they don't really do too much with that 20 megapixel compared to what Nokia does. Nokia does magic with those 20 megapixels, and no optical image stabilization really on the Sonys. I mean, they have some really good digital stabilization, but.
And my one pet peeve with the Sony, like I am totally in love with that phone, but it's on video. You can't choose focus, right?
Oh, so really?
Then, like, you get this pulsing, and I'm like, seriously, Sony, you were so close, and then you just you're like, oh, god damn it.
Yeah, you know what's one actually, speaking of the G3 again, one of the things I've noticed that's interesting with the laser autofocus is that it will, if you just using the viewfinder to do a still, it will refocus a lot more often than a normal phone does because it can do it so quickly. It's a little disconcerting at times because you're like, okay, I'm really happy, and then you change focus on me because the light changed, because like a cloud went by or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it's a little too twitchy, and I'm wondering again if porting the other app would fix that, because the other app doesn't expect the autofocus to be able to respond as quickly, right? Even though it will respond quickly because it's hardware dependent, not software dependent at that point. We'll see. I'm going to experiment. This is going to be my homework.
Wow, I can't wait.
Yes. So we talked a bit about the phones that are making you happy. The Z2, the 1520. Any other phones?
No, I mean that's pretty much it. I can't get into the M8. I don't know why.
No?
I just can't get into it. Like we've had it in the office. I'll use it and I'll be like, I'm just not really excited about it. The camera takes great pictures and then surprisingly average, below average pictures. I mean, it's just so situational. And then when I have like the Z2 sitting there, I'm like, but I could just go back to that if I'm using Android. Right. I could go back to that.
I feel the same way. I mean, I feel a little differently than you. For me, I love the industrial design of the M8. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. It feels great in hand, all that jazz. And so they win there over everyone else. But I actually think their skin is my favorite of the skins out there. It's so lightweight. It feels so intuitive. It feels so close to Nexus experience that almost I'm at the point where I'm not even sure I need a Google Play edition of the HTC M8. There is one, but I don't know if I care because it's fine. The thing that they really fucked up this year is that duo camera. they removed OIS, which is the only saving grace they had on the M7 last year.
Yeah.
Because the big pixels are awesome in low light, and OIS justifies it, but then they remove the thing that justifies it. Because what I'm finding is that even with the M8 Mini, sorry, not the M8 Mini, the HTC One Mini 2, terrible name.
Yeah, it's a terrible name.
Right,
Yeah.
with the HTC One Mini 2, which has a 13 megapixel camera, even though it's not as good in low light, it's clearly not as able to gather as much light. I would argue that the gain in resolution makes it worthwhile. If they had put OIS on that 13 megapixel module and stuck that in the HTC One M8, I think it would have been serviceable for me.
You know, absolutely. So we had we did a review of the HTC 816, which I actually saw somebody using on
Desire. Yeah, I like the Desire 816.
That was a fabulous phone. I mean, and the camera was great.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like, oh, this is the best camera ever made, but it was better than what was on the M8, definitely. Yeah. And like they artificially removed a bunch of features from the camera because it's a mid-range device, but the point and shoot quality of that phone was really good.
Yeah, it's the same exact camera module as the HTC One Mini 2. God, that name. But it's I agree with you. I mean, I can certainly see that you lose something in low light, but that's nothing OIS can fix, and that's the thing. Like, when they went to the Ultra Pixel last year with the M7, I actually thought to myself, all they had to do compared to the 1X prior and the Butterfly and J Butterfly was to just add OIS to the 8 megapixel sensor. That 8 megapixel sensor was so good in low light. Maybe a slightly faster lens and OIS, and we would have been done. But no, they had to go to ultra pixels, and then this year they had to screw it all up by removing OIS. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, so you were in one of the emails you said you had the Padphone X.
Yeah. So I have an interesting story about that. They're sending me a second one because my first one totally died. It's bizarre. Well, I shouldn't say it did totally die. That's not true. It works. It boots up and it runs and it's usable. Except none of the cellular radios work anymore. It lost its cellular mind. And I thought at first it was like a SIM provisioning issue, but no, it's just no way. Even with swapping SIMs and trying different things. Anyway, they're sending me a new one. But I've had a chance to play with it for about 10 days, and my takeaway is, so I don't know if the Padphone X over there is the same as the one we have. This is an AT&T unique version, I guess.
Well, we don't have one over here,
right?
So I haven't actually gotten to use it.
You have the Infinity, right?
I have the Infinity, which is to me a way better version of the Padphone X.
Yeah, I agree.
I like it a lot more.
So the Padphone X, I can tell you this. What's disappointing about it is it's really kind of cheap, plasticky, low-grade material design, right? I mean, it's well made, but it's it's kind of ugly. And honestly, I this is going to be sounding crazy. I know my listeners are going to I'm going to blow their minds. It's worse than the Galaxy S5, and you know how much I hate the Galaxy S5 in terms of design and materials. So
let me tell you a story. Okay, go on, finish.
No. You go ahead. I'll tell you my impressions afterwards.
Okay, so I got the Mini, the Padphone Mini for review, and like it broke my heart to the point where I had to give it to someone else to review. I was like, I can't even do it. You have to review it. I'm just so sad by it. Well, it's exactly what the Padphone X. It's got this cheap, ugly case. It has poor industrial design. It feels shitty in the hand. And because I've been a Padphone user from day one.
Yeah, I remember. I was super stoked when you showed me in Taipei. I think this Computex 2012, right?
Yeah. And like the concept, like ASUS is the only one pushing things forward on this idea that like you can have everything in one place. And when I was a Padphone user, I loved it when I would take flights because I never had to prepare a second device.
Right.
right? Everything else I have everything together, and it would be perfect. And so I was out with some guys from Asus. I was out for drinks, and I was telling them, I'm like, guys, you broke my heart. Like, how could this be the device that you're first letting the U.S. and Europe have access to? I mean, like, the Padphone Infinity is stunning, like, just
I know.
stunning. And then this is what you're showing them. This is what you're giving them. I was so mad. But then they were telling me, they're like, look, Nicole, there are Johnny products and there are Jerry products, right? These are Jerry products, right? Products that are built for the sales channels, right? That aren't built for like inspiring the industry and being beautiful and pushing the boundaries. That's Johnny's job, right? And then when Jerry gets a hold of it, we get some cheap, shitty, uninspired thing that technically will sell well because of a good price point. It just breaks my heart.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, because so here's my takeaway in general. So let's just talk about the phone alone for a second. So in uninspired cheap materials, uninspired design cheap materials, absolutely. In terms of specs, top notch. I mean, it's Snapdragon 800, 5-inch 1080p display. It's a really nice display. It's not HTC M8 nice, but it's a very nice display. Really good camera. It's a 13 megapixel, no OIS. However, it has this really cool low light trick where you can take 3 megapixel shots by combining pixels, kind of like what Nokia does, like software trickery, and it works. It really works. Even without turning that mode on, low light is really good on the Padphone X. So as a phone, it's perfectly competitive with, Galaxy S5, HTC One M8, the LG G2, etc. But just if you can live with the crappy, the cheap design, and the skin is, it's a little heavier than I'd like it to be, but it's okay. It's manageable. At least the camera app is good, so that saves the day. So. Now, there's a whole different dimension, right? You know this. I'm just kind of like doing the spectacle for the readers and listeners. But then there is the tablet, right? So you slide the thing in the tablet, and boom, instantly it turns into a tablet. And it's really quite magical. I mean, I remember when they launched the concept in 2011. You were there with me and Richard Lai and everyone, and like that little cassette player thing, like the little door. We were just like, oh my God, this is the future, right? So I mean, it is still sci-fi moment when you slide that phone in, and it grips, it holds. You don't have to worry about it falling out, which is really amazing. And then all of a sudden, it's a tablet with like a beautiful. The display is okay. I mean, it's not the best tablet display, but it's a pretty serviceable display, and lo and behold, your battery life goes out the roof because you now have this giganto battery in there. So this is what I like about it. This is great. There are issues there, though. Again, the tablet is kind of boring design and cheap materials. And
9-inch with those enormous bezels.
Gigantic bezel is a big problem, and the other problem is that half the apps will restart when you. When you slide it in. So if you're in the middle of composing even email in Gmail, I mean, it's going to go as into a draft, but there's a bit of a hiccup there. I mean, you can tell that some apps are okay, and like there's a way to manage that, but it's still a bit of a disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And I don't see the mainstream really getting too happy with this, with some of that happening. Now, the cool thing, though, in the U.S. is that both of these devices together are $199 on contract.
Yeah, that's crazy. Which is crazy.
And so think about that for a second. I mean, I would say you're better served by a separate tablet and a separate phone if you can afford it, because that is a dead paperweight when you don't have the phone in it right now, right? Yeah. But at the same time, $199 is the price of a high-end phone alone on contract in the U.S. So.
But I mean, if they like, I wonder how much more it would have cost to basically just do the Padphone Infinity with its cord. Like it was one of the top 5 most beautiful phones of last year. I mean, in my books, it was one of the most stunning devices out there.
It was.
And like, how how much more could it like? How much more really would it have cost if they maybe 300 on contract than we would have had? Then they could have shown what they could do. I mean, like, ASUS has no brand equity in the U.S., and to have this be the device to say, look, this is ASUS, to me is kind of heartbreaking.
Well, I have to tell you, I honestly think this is a carrier decision. I think this is one of those situations where ASUS has no leverage and they needed a carrier partner, and we know what the carriers are like in the US. It's an absolute disaster.
Yeah, carriers ruining things again.
Yeah, so here's another thing I have to say. The phone is pretty light, but the tablet, even without the phone, is kind of heavy. And then, so another thing you should know is they gave us to review the keyboard dock. So it's a Bluetooth key. There's no electrical connection between the keyboard and the tablet. So it's just Bluetooth. So you have to charge the keyboard separately. And it's very heavy because they had to design it so that the tablet won't tip over the whole thing. So once you dock it to this Bluetooth keyboard, it's a pretty damn heavy package. Like, it's heavier than my MacBook Air or my Chromebook Pixel, which is pretty incredible. But the keyboard's really good, and they've implemented all the shortcut keys, so you can Control C for copy, all that stuff works. Alt Tab for switching apps works, which is, I was like, wow, this is like, so personally, I've mostly used it as a laptop and as a phone, but not really just as a tablet, because I'm really not that much of a tablet person.
Yeah.
But the keyboard is very heavy, but it's $99 for a Bluetooth keyboard.
Which is
pretty
aggressive. Yeah.
It's kind of a lot. Like, I'm sorry, it doesn't. If it was like the physical connection with more battery in it and maybe a USB 3 port on it and an SD card reader, I'd say $99, great. But a Bluetooth keyboard?
Yeah.
And the trackpad's okay, but it doesn't support two-finger scrolling.
Oh.
So, I mean, you're going to say, well, it's a tablet, just scroll on the I'm like, yeah, but come on. The whole point of, like, for me, this is actually what stops me from using Android in a laptop mode right now, is that it's still missing too much of this friction. There's too much friction still for me to really be productive. It's not the OS per se. It's the implementation of the UI, really, that kills it for me most of the time. What about you?
No, I'm the same as, like, for using an Android in a laptop. I just find that I need too many things open, and, like, you can switch pretty quickly between them, but I've just found it's just not multitasking friendly. So I've been playing a little bit, a few months ago when they first launched it, I got the Samsung Galaxy Tab 12.2 Pro.
Yeah.
An amazing named product. But Samsung has added in some pretty interesting things for, like, 4-section multitasking and things like that. I think in terms of Android, Samsung is the closest right now to making it usable.
But so here's my beef. Like, I don't want to play devil's advocate here, but here's my beef. Like, all this is beautiful, but I still feel so much more productive and comfortable on a Chromebook. And Chromebooks can be. I mean, even the cheapest Chromebook today is really nice. Like, good keyboard, good display, long battery life. And you get a freaking full web browser. I mean, I know you can't do any local stuff and whatever, but if you're just writing or surfing the web, and you're not doing video editing or whatever, it's super serviceable. And so this is the level. This is what I want. Like, I want Android to be able to scale to that. I want Android, when I dock my tablet into my keyboard, to turn into Chrome OS. If they can do that, yeah, we could have a device that does all three. You're
right. I would actually be on board for something like that, because you're right. The Chrome OS is definitely a productivity.
So here's the question. You were at Computex. Is the Pad phone or the Transformer 5, Transformer book, whatever it's called. What is it called? 5. I know it's 5.
Transformer 5, yeah. It's so thin. It's too thin. I was looking at it. I'm like, is this really? I'm like, am I gonna break it? Can it go up my back? It just looked so, and they wouldn't let anyone touch it, right?
Oh, that
So
sucks.
yeah, and so it's basically everyone has an eyes on, and then you look at the Llama Mountain reference designs, like just so stunning. Like it's just so thin. I don't know. Like that was my question, I guess, with like the Gioni S5.5.
I
Like
saw
is
your
it too
review.
thin? But it's not too thin, right? So I'm like, okay, if I was wrong about this 5.5 millimeter thin smartphone, then maybe I'm wrong about the Transform Book 5. I mean, like the design,
Yeah.
Asus knocked it out of the park, but is it too thin? I don't know. Like, is it too
It's
thin?
interesting. I mean, this one's a pretty interesting one because you can still use the tablet when you're using the phone, right? I mean, they're not mutually exclusive, which is kind of a huge change. I actually would see a slightly cheaper, maybe less fancy version of this to me with Chrome OS running on the tablet when it's not docked into the phone would be a really cool alternative.
No,
So go on.
I was really surprised actually that Asus found a workaround to the whole like Intel on Android versus ARM and Google at the same time.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It's really funny.
I know. They're pretty clever, those Asus people.
They're really
Um,
clever.
I just realized we have about 15, maybe about 15 minutes left. So and I also realized I didn't turn on the Q&A, which I'm gonna do right now.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Generally, it's just, at the end we just take a few questions. But
Well, we haven't talked about the Amazon phone yet.
yeah, so exactly. And also, in case anybody views this after like tomorrow or something, the reason I'm yellow is because it's dark. It's like past midnight now, and I wanted to be able to accommodate Nicole, who's in Taiwan, and it's like 3 in the afternoon, and for you, it's perfect. So it's the first time I've done a podcast in the dark. So what's your take on that? The Amazon phone. I was in Seattle yesterday. I tried to get into the Amazon event. And I have to say, I have a beef with you people, Amazon PR, because you gave me the runaround. You gave a lot of people the runaround, and you were very picky and choosy. I understand that, but come on. Like, I was in Seattle anyway because I was invited to go to T-Mobile, and I decided I was going to go and spend some time with some friends for a couple of days. So I was there. I was 5 blocks away. Like, why couldn't I go in and take some cool pictures and, boost your egos some more? I don't know. That's my beef.
That sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
So my impressions are for a phone that is an amazing shopping portal, it should have been more heavily subsidized.
I agree.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly. I think they really lost. I mean, I tweeted this at the time. I think they lost the opportunity to basically make this something that didn't even have a tie-in with a carrier.
Exactly.
Like WhisperNet, or like what they have with the Kindle Fire HDX LT. I think it's the one that has a cool data plan. Like, I don't think there's a problem with mentioning that you're partnering with a network, because you still live in a world where obviously they want some recognition. But imagine if I never had to deal with AT&T ever. Like, imagine I paid some kind of special Prime membership, maybe $200 a year, to get basic, data service and voice and all I can need voice and text. Maybe get a gig a month or something. I mean, that's a lot. That's pretty low, but like maybe some kind of special Prime membership, and then I could use Mayday if I had a problem for customer service. I would never touch the carrier ever in any way, shape, or form. That's what I was expecting them to do. And then add some tiers, like you pay a little more, you get more data or whatever. And there's a top tier, which is like the Prime Ultimate, and you get, all the data you can need. That would have been the way to go, and they missed that opportunity. The price subsidized is super expensive, like $199 for those specs. And you're going to say, well, there's all this technology with the, what is it called, the 3D thing?
Yeah.
But it's
dynamic 3D display or something.
Yeah. Anyway, so
yeah.
like,
No, and
too expensive all the way around. And you're right that with all the content that they sell through this, they're going to sell through this thing. It's completely. It doesn't seem like they're subsidizing it in any way with the content, as you said.
I mean, and the thing is that we know from the OnePlus that you can put out a phone with killer specs for $350. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not as if a really greatly like a great spec phone can't be enough, right? So it's just really unfortunate. They seem to have completely missed the boat on like relationships with carriers, prices, Amazon, like even boasting their Amazon Prime stuff. Because I know that like I bought my dad all kinds of tablets, and I'd be like, "How do you like them, Dad?" And he's like, "Oh, I went back to my first Kindle Fire." And I'm like, "Really, Dad?" He's like, "Yeah, I love it." Right? He goes, "All of my content's right there in an easy way for me to look at." I'm like, "Okay, but you're pretty tech savvy, but you still prefer that because he enjoys the way of content consumption, right?" And it's true. The Mayday is the most amazing way
it's
to
incredible.
get to using a new device and to consuming content in new ways and having somewhere there to always explain it to you. I mean, and like the concept of taking your device out and consuming data and content in different places is something that they could easily take on with Mayday to explain to a whole new generation. It's just, it's unfortunate, especially with their whole advertising strategy, or what was that? The promotion strategy with that book, right? You know, expect something completely different. You know, like something completely, and they didn't, right? Like an amazing shopping portal that wasn't subsidized, that missed the boat on teaching like that older generation how to have.
And so here's the killer too, is that so they put these like early adopter tech savvy features on it, like there's 4 cameras that are probably going to draw a lot of power with the infrared LED on each corner. And I mean, I'm sure that they've optimized the crap out of it. They did their work, but ultimately, to me, those are like early adopter tech savvy adopter features. Yet this is a device that doesn't have Google Play services. Right? So what does this early adopter tech-savvy person want? They want their Google Play services on an Android phone. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This is an Android phone. So they missed the boat there. And I think the only thing I'm really excited about, I think is very, very interesting, is 2 things. Firefly, I think this ability, like, I mean, it's the ultimate shopping phone, as some people, I didn't coin that. Many people have written that, and I think it's totally true. And that is very smart of them. And the 13 megapixel f/2.0 OIS camera in the back of that thing has me really excited because, I mean, it could be crap because it's their first one, but hardware spec-wise, this camera sounds super awesome. It's, pretty much what you have in a G2, and that's pretty high praise right there, right? So, yeah.
But I mean, even if you look at the HDX tablets that they've released this year, it for a tablet camera, it's among the top.
Yeah.
Right. Like they've already taken the effort to learn how to optimize software for cameras, which I think is one of the biggest things, right? Because you can have like with Lenovo, I'm kind of reviewing the Vibe Z right now, and they're like, oh, it's 13 megapixel. I'm like, but it's what you do with the software,
right?
You can get whatever sensor you want in there, but have you learned how to deal with the data from that camera, right? And sometimes the answer is no.
Yeah, often, yeah. I mean, so these are kind of the 2 things that got me excited: the camera, the Firefly stuff, but then the dynamic, whatever, the 3D thing, the UI. Do you care about having a UI that re-renders based on your facial position? Like, no, it's a total gimmick.
If you remember, what was it, a year ago? There was I can't remember who was. It was a bunch of ODMs were doing it. Tilt the phone back in order to scroll.
That's Samsung.
Nobody did it. Nobody used it.
It's terrible. None of these gesture-based scrolling things. Actually, Samsung's had this since I'm going to date myself because I love doing this kind of crap. Samsung's before the Galaxy line, before they went Android, they had a Symbian phone with an OLED display and an 8 megapixel camera. Samsung, i8900, but what was the name? Omnia HD. Ding,
Omnia
ding,
H.
ding, ding, ding. The Omnia HD had the scroll, like you could scroll through the picture gallery like by tilting it, you know,
Yeah.
or tilting it like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it was never useful then, and that was in 2007, 8, whatever. Like nobody cares today. Can you imagine who does that to scroll? I don't know. Maybe I'm
And it's
wrong.
because when you have it activated and you're doing something else, like, oh shit, what did that feature just do to my gallery?
Yeah.
It's almost like, damn it, why is that there?
No, it's terrible, and it's like I was very disappointed because honestly for me all I wanted out of this thing was this kind of subsidy model using
Yeah.
the content and using making the carrier basically a dumb pipe for Amazon. And a lot of people, like when I commented about this on Twitter during the live event because I couldn't make it in, I was like literally 5 blocks away in a coffee shop. It's ridiculous. I was like, they're like, but you don't understand. They don't have that kind of power. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Are you shit out of your mind? This is Amazon. They own retail in this country. They could tell AT&T to go screw themselves. I don't understand how that didn't happen. Like, they could have said, oh, you don't want it, AT&T? Well, Verizon want it. If Verizon doesn't want it, John Ledger and T-Mobile, they're crazy. The guy's insane. Of course they'll do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then Sprint, of course, you don't want to touch Sprint with a 10-foot pole. But hey, that's my opinion. Look at you, you're laughing. But it's true.
Yeah, no, I mean, and as somebody who doesn't live in the U.S., it's always like I actually like get hurt sides just about the carrier politics that have to.
It's funny, right?
It's really funny, and it seems like it's even more over the top than most other countries, which is pretty surprising because 3G on its own is a pretty head-shaking kind of area to cover. Oh.
For sure. Well, welcome to my world. So speaking of the carriers, I really want to quickly plug in the fact that unlike Amazon, who really didn't want to have anything to do with me, I mean, come on. How could they not want me to do anything to do with me? I like their stuff. Like, seriously. Anyway, T-Mobile, loves me. John Ledger is awesome, and they invited me to their event, and I went, and it was a spectacle. Like, literally, the guy has such showmanship. I love this guy as a CEO. He's so entertaining. Oh my God. And I mean, I don't want to get into great details because it's really U.S. specific, and our audience is primarily Europeans right now, and you are based in Taiwan. But it's interesting to me that they're continuing this revolution of kind of setting the standard of what a carrier should do for the U.S. and dragging the rest of the carriers very slowly kicking and screaming into it. And they did two things, really, in a nutshell. One, you can now test drive the service completely for free for a week, including a device. They don't charge you for it at all in any way, shape, or form unless you don't return the phone. And you don't have to lose your current plan in any way. Like you don't have to commit to anything, so you're not porting your number or anything. And for a week, you can try their service and their phone, and go like, wow, or go like, this sucks. And then they're hoping to get more wows and it sucks and get more customers, and then have then they can apply all the other stuff they've announced in the previous events, which is things like paying your early termination fee and giving you no contract and all that. It's really cool. And then the second thing they totally blew us away with was that if you have one of the lesser plans where you are capped on data, you now have unlimited streaming of a key selection of music services, which is really kind of crazy and incredible, at least for the U.S. You're probably laughing over there in the rest of the world, all of you and Nicole included. But I think this is pretty significant. So, So
the one thing I actually did take notice of it because social media just became a flutter with people going, oh my God, I think I'm for the first time in years considering T-Mobile. And like it was like Google Plus and Twitter just kind of got this like little shower of like pink pink fuzzies for T-Mobile.
But look, I think the takeaway being there is really not that per se, like the service, and it's that T-Mobile seems to be the only carrier looking at the fact that our phones are not just to make phone calls, that our phones are our portable computers that we do everything important to us with, that they are a communication device and a computer in our hands, in our pockets, and they are looking at data use really like on like what are people doing. Music's really important and this eats up a lot of their data, and video is really important, eats up a lot of their data. What can we do to make it even more awesome for them? Like, they're adapting to the world where it is today in 2014, whereas I think the other carriers, and this even applies to European and Asian carriers, are still kind of stuck in this era of like, yeah, phone calls, and like we're so past that. And seeing John Ledger on stage talking about that made me like go like, wow, they are so getting it,
Yeah, I had a meeting with Deutsche Telekom, which is the German version of T-Mobile, like
Right.
the same company, and they were like, look at the suitcase of the future, right? And like just all about integrating data of like GPS of your luggage and like really visualizing like the relationship that you have to your other gadgets and like making data for them and like my luggage, and like that I could digitally get my luggage tag into the e-ink display of the and I'm like, wow, Deutsche Telekom, this is really next generation relationships with my devices. And it just really, it's true, they really are thinking about the future in a much bigger way than other carriers are. You're completely right about it.
And so, that was kind of a breath of fresh air. And yeah, I mean, an interesting week overall. I think I'm still more excited about my G3, the fact that I've been playing with it for, almost 2 weeks now. What other phones, just to update my listeners and readers, the Padphone X. So as soon as I get a replacement, I'm going to do a video, because I was actually going to do the video yesterday. No, not yesterday, Sunday. And that's when it happened. Like I charged it overnight. Sunday morning, I took it off the charger, and I was like, let's do the video. And I'm like, wait, I don't have signal. This is weird. I'm on Wi-Fi. Everything's working, but I don't have signal. Why? So I was like, oh, maybe the SIM is not provisioned anymore, right? So to reviewing it. So I pulled the SIM out, put it in another AT&T phone. Works like a champ. So I restart the phone. I put one of my working SIMs in the phone. Nothing. I finally did like a hard reset, then I finally did a factory reset just in case, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. That phone does not want to see a cellular network to save its life. In fact, Android has that crazy menu you can go in, like pound star 4636 star pound, I think. I tried that, and when I went in there, it said the radio was off, despite not being in airplane mode. It had a little button that says turn radio on, and I tapped on that, and it gave me an error message saying unable to turn on radio, which is why I think the chips just fried. Like, it just bit the bullet at some point while charging or something. I don't know. It's really weird. So
when I was reviewing my Asus Zenfone 6, one of the things that I left out of the review, because I contacted Asus about it, I was like, your 3G isn't stable. Right, and they're like, oh, it's because it's pre-production. I was like, okay. Right, I left it out of my review. But
well, no, but this seems to me like just purely a hardware issue, and so they're sending me a new one, and I mean, I'm not even going to mention in my review, because it's not like it's happened before. I got an HTC phone I reviewed once, like during the battery test, overheated and literally melted itself, like not physically visibly, right? But the chips inside just died. The thing conked out completely during a battery rundown test, and they were stunned. Actually, Jeff, the awesome HTC PR person here in the US, had me send it to their engineers. They were stunned. They're like, oh my God, what's going on? And I was really glad to oblige, because what do you do? Like, you need to help these people out, right? You don't want this happening to a customer. So anyway, other than that, what else do I? Yeah.
What review I have going live on Monday? The OnePlus One.
Ooh, the OnePlus One. So I have an invitation to the OnePlus One, and I could use that to buy one. I'm still trying to kind of get a review in it, because I have a feeling that for a while
they're a pain in the ass.
They are really a pain. I don't know what their problem is. For a while there, I was like, oh, I want this phone to replace my Nexus 5, because it's really like kind of like the Nexus 5 spiritual successor, Cyanogen mod and it's affordable and super powerful. But honestly, now that I have a G3, I don't care. I'm like, what else do I want? Like a Nexus 6 based on the G3? Oh, yes, please, right? Can you imagine if they make a Nexus 6 out of that thing?
That'd be amazing.
Right. I mean, the reality to me... What's that?
No, but I have to say about the OnePlus, the finish on it, you need to hold it in your hand. Like I have been when I was in Shenzhen maybe 3 months ago, I started seeing cases kind of like this. You can't really tell, but it's like got this like soft touch, kind of like almost like it's just it's more than a soft touch.
That's a Galaxy S5 case. Put that away.
Yeah, sorry. but you know what I mean? It's like it just. The finish on that OnePlus One, as soon as you have it in your hand, you're like, I only want to hold this phone for the rest of my life.
So speaking of Galaxy S5, I finally have a review unit. I mean, I don't want to bug Samsung. They know I'm very critical of their product, but at the same time, I'm really grateful that despite the fact that I, even though I don't talk about wearables on my blog, I do work for a wearable company, and they're a competitor, and they're still awesome enough to send me the phones, and that speaks to the awesomeness of the people at the USPR team. But they finally got me a review unit, so I'm also going to be reviewing that. And I mean, you already know how I feel. I think it's definitely a great phone overall. You can't go wrong with this phone, but there's no passion there, right? It's just it gets the job done, and millions and millions of people are gonna buy it, not knowing that they have honestly probably better options out there, right?
And the plastic can get a bit smelly, actually.
Really? I haven't gotten there. Wait, I need to smell it. Let's smell my Galaxy S5.
Yeah. No, but like if you like leave
it doesn't smell yet.
Yeah, no, so we spilled some beer on ours, and then I couldn't get the beer smell out.
Right, because it's waterproof, right? So you're going to experiment with that. Yeah.
Well,
the first waterproof phone I ever had was the Motorola Defy, and I put that poor phone into every liquid I could find. Well, okay, not every, but every food liquid I could find. Like beer, coffee. Coffee was terrible. I couldn't get the stains off. It was a white phone. It turned yellow. I'm serious. Beer, orange juice. I kept going to brunch and dunking it into people's drinks, and I'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Ha, waterproof phone, suckers." I'll be honest. Look, I really think it's not a gimmick. I really think we're gonna look back 2 years from now. We're gonna look back and say, how did we not have all our phones waterproof?
No, I 100% agree. Like, it's just for the accidental drops in toilets. My one concern about all the LG phones with the rear button is that if I don't have them in a case and I have them at the bar, the condensation on the G2 was a bit and so why hasn't LG made that phone waterproof? Exactly. Like, it's not a gimmick. That should have just been go for par. They should have made that phone waterproof.
I honestly would be surprised if next year's flagships, I would be surprised if they're all waterproof. And you know what? And it might not be the same as Samsung, which is using a seal, like an old-fashioned way of waterproofing. They might be using some of those new coatings that various companies have been using for a while now, because I actually think that's a better solution, frankly.
It's a way better solution. When we put our S5 in the washing machine, there was a couple.
That? I missed that.
Yeah, we did that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and it was not because Sasha dunked it in beer and I couldn't get the smell out, but we did that. We did the whole washing machine. We put the Z2 in as well, and there was a couple of drops of condensation or liquid inside of the seal of the S5. I mean, it's a good solution for the removable back, but at the same time,
did it survive though? It was fine.
It did.
Quit on you? Wow.
Yeah, it totally. Yeah, no, but I got called out in the comments for this. They're like, no washing machine is ever that full. I'm like, well, my washing machines are always that full.
My washing machine is always really full too. Well, listen, we're kind of out of time, but it was really fun. I think I want you to pimp your blog and your universe definitely before you go. But I think it was a good conversation, right? We covered a bunch of cool stuff: G3, Padphone, Computex, Amazon, T-Mobile.
Carriers.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was all right. So tell the world where they can find you and what you do and who you are, because you are awesome.
Oh, thanks. So I'm based in Taiwan, so I know a lot about Asian Chinese handsets as well. So like the Gioni, the OnePlus, and all the unnamed clones and knockoffs and no-name Chinese phones. I cover a lot of that. They are getting just as good. We're very close. What are you getting for that extra $400 between like the $100 phone to the $700 phone? I don't know. The Chinese phones are getting close. Anyway, so I cover a lot of that. So mobilegeeks.com, and then we have a German site, mobilegeeks.de, and you can find me pretty much everywhere, Nicole_Scooter. Nicole Scooter.
Yep, you are everywhere. So yeah, thanks again for coming. After we're going to stay on the air a bit longer and chit chat, but I wanted to just remind everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video, and there will be an audio version of this podcast, like cleaned up, beautiful, on iTunes and on my RSS feed. You know, any podcatcher. Probably in the next 2-3 days. Sometimes it takes me a few days to get to it, but it'll be there soon. So. Thanks for joining us. We'll have more to talk about next month with whatever happens in the phone and mobile universe. I mean, I'm sure we'll have to talk about I/O, which I'm attending next week. So there are going to be some interesting things at I/O, right? And we'll be able to talk. Hopefully, there'll be not just talk of wearables, because I don't want to talk about that, but you know. So thanks again for joining us, Nicole.
Thanks so much for having me. I can't wait to hear the next one, to hear all about Google I/O.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, quickly, I'm tnkgrl on Twitter, tnkgrl, and my website is tnkgrl.com, tnkgrl.com. Find me there. Next month, be there or be square. Cheers, everybody. Bye.